Hello, and welcome to the NOTstalgia podcast.
A podcast where we discuss the retelling or continuation of pop culture favorites as seen through a queer and feminist lens.
My name is Eric Lefebvre.
And I'm Jessica Tercero.
And this week, we are doing something for the first time that we've never done on the podcast. And by that, I'm being facetious because we're revisiting Ghostbusters. But this time, we're doing Ghostbusters 2 and the new Ghostbusters Afterlife. So, Jess, we've already talked about Ghostbusters. We've already talked about kind of our history with Ghostbusters in that first episode.
Which we will link in the show notes.
Yes. So if you haven't heard that first one, it will be there. Go back. I think it's episode 3. This is a early episode of the show.
Yeah, it's 3 or 4. It's pretty fucking early. But yeah, so we decided to do this in kind of this format because technically this Afterlife is continuing the 1980s Ghostbusters. They're acting like the Melissa McCarthy, Kristen Wiig one never happened, which is so funny to me because I feel like every news site that was like, this female reboot is trash and fuck this, and everybody that was trying to tank it originally, literally the headlines are, we should have appreciated the 2016 remake when we had the chance. And I was yeah, you should have.
Yeah.
But still, it was still leaps and bounds better, I think, than Afterlife, which we will get into for various reasons.
I disagree, and I'm excited to talk about that.
Oh, man. Is this going to be another episode where we have differences of opinion on
I think we're going to have differences of opinion. It's not going to be because other times where I was like, no, I'm hard. I'm not going on the wagon or on the team of justice for Afterlife by no means. I have many, many problems with it, but just in terms of Afterlife v Heed the Call. What was it? Heed the Call or something? Answer the Call.
Something I didn't realize that there was I thought it was just Ghostbusters. I didn't realize that it was there was a cult. Because when you search Ghostbusters 2016, it just says Ghostbusters 2016. I didn't realize that it had that little sub attached to the title. What the fuck?
I know. It gets swept under the rug. Answer the Call, I think, is what it is. So it's I will say I personally do like Afterlife more than I like Answer the Call, but we'll get into that a little bit.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like it's gonna be an interesting episode because they are only linked by IP and a couple other things that I want to bring up. But apart from that, it's not like Afterlife is retelling. I mean, granted, it is a continuation of the same world because in this one, Ghostbusters 2 is technically canon because it's of the same. Answer the Call is the only one that's erased. And I don't think we're including the cartoons in this version of the continued story. It's just the original Ghostbusters. I think it's going to be a good conversation because also this is going to be the cummiest episode we've ever done, and that is a CUM episode.
Yes, that is a nasty version.
That's going to be the
X-rated one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So getting back to our relationship with Ghostbusters, we talked about the first one. The second one, I don't think I had ever I've seen the original Ghostbusters a couple times, we talked about, but I had not seen it in probably since the first time I saw it. I don't remember anything about it, which is why watching this now as an adult was incredibly eye-opening.
Yeah.
I'm kind of at a loss for words because it was I was so shocked at some of the stuff that I saw.
It's silly and weird, and it's
and not in a good way.
Yeah,
not in a good way.
I'm excited to talk about it. I mean, personally, I've never seen the second one. In watching this, I realized I've literally just never seen it. That's not something that existed in my life until a couple days ago.
I feel like Ghostbusters 2 would be better if they just decided to go full on for the porn parody. Because there was just so many cum references in there. And visualization. Oh my God. Oh, and Sigourney Weaver took off her shirt for no reason, which again, we'll get into.
Yeah.
But Afterlife, I had not seen. You had already seen it, right?
I watched it once before we decided to do the episode. Yeah, so this was my second viewing of it. And I feel nothing changed in my opinion about it. It was just like, oh yeah, that is just what it was.
I feel like, I don't know, I had no interest in seeing this next one. I was just kind of like, oh, whatever. So here we are doing it for the pod. And
here we are.
Should we just get into it?
Let's do it. I mean, and I just wanted to also not preface, but like, because Ghostbusters is like, at this point, the most covered IP on the podcast. I feel like it's also one of the most hated IP on the podcast, and that's not going to change at all with this episode. So just keep that in mind. If you're a Ghostbusters fan, NOTstalgia canonically hates Ghostbusters. Let's get into it. 5 years after their battle with Gozer, the Ghostbusters essentially broke up, and freshly divorced Dana Barrett is now an art conservator and a single mom. Dana and her son Oscar have an unexplained occurrence that prompts her to reach out to Egon and Ray for help, at which point her ex-boyfriend Peter decides to force his way into her life once again. Egon, Ray, Peter, and Winston is here, investigate the area and find an ancient underground slime sewer and somehow manage to cut the power line for all of New York's electricity and are subsequently arrested. During their trial, a sample of the slime becomes negatively charged by the negative emotions in the courtroom, causing a pair of ghosts to come forth. The Ghostbusters strike a deal with the judge and bust said courtroom ghost in exchange for the dismissal of the charges, while Dana's boss becomes the servant of Big Bad Spirit Daddy, whose soul is stuck in one of the paintings under restoration.
On the other side of town, topless Dana is about to give Oscar a bath when the two have another weird incident involving slime coming out of the bathtub and reaching for the baby. Dana goes straight to Peter's apartment and decides to stay there for a while despite Peter's gross behavior. The Ghostbusters realize the slime is charged by emotion and warn the mayor, who turns them away, while Dana's boss kidnaps Oscar for the Big Bad Spirit Daddy, who wants the baby for his new corporeal form. Dana goes after her child, becoming a hostage herself, and the Ghostbusters decide to shoot slime inside the Statue of Liberty to bring it to life and bring hope to the people. They smash into the building Dana and Oscar are being held in, save both of them, and everyone is happy in New York for the first time ever.
Woo! Come the Musical is this film.
This film is about cum and mommies.
It's mommies and cum.
That's all it is.
And end of themes. It's literally like, okay, first let's go for it. I hate Sigourney Weaver's story arc in this.
Fucking awful.
It's the rudest, silliest, and worst possible choice, but obviously, of course, they were like, oh, Sigourney Weaver's coming back. Let's just make her a mom. And like, oh no, now she's helpless. Like, whereas before she was this like super strong, autonomous, confident. She was kind of the one like being like, you guys suck, whatever. I know, you know what I mean? And now suddenly she's like, I'm mommy.
She's literally taken out of the final battle with a shop vac hose.
Oh my God.
That is how they decided that she's just like, oh my God, I'm a mom. I can't fight back. I can't do anything. By a shop vac hose that looked like she could have just wiggled her way on out of there. And let's talk about Dana's timeline for a second, because this film takes place 5 years after the original, where Peter and Dana break up because he pretends to not hear her when she talks about marriage, because of course women want marriage right away. And then she also has time to get married and get divorced and have a baby, and the baby is 8 to 9 months old. So that means that her piece of shit ex-husband, who I think in an interview Sigourney said that it was the nose spray guy from the first one, or like the orchestra guy that she I think it's supposed to be that wiener. Okay. But so the baby is 8 to 9 months old. I think it's 8 months in the first scene, and then a little bit later, like 9, whatever. I saw 8 and 9 months. That means that this piece of shit divorced her while she was fucking pregnant.
Yeah.
And also, I don't understand why Dana, as a mother, cannot be in an orchestra. She had to give that up. And I don't understand what the fuck is keeping her in New York, because if my husband said, I got a job in London playing for the orchestra, I'd be like, fuck yeah, I'm not even doing the job that I really want to do. I have no friends. I have no family, because why the fuck does she go to Peter's house when she's feeling unsafe? Why does she like not have anybody to call or anybody to go and be there for her? She has no community. Why wouldn't she just be like, yeah, dude, I'll go. Like, fuck it.
Well, Jez, who's she going to call? I mean, without a doubt, 100% agree completely, wholeheartedly, emphatically with everything you've said. It makes no sense for any of that stuff, especially for her character, because Dana's so cool. Why this? And like,
even the way they dress her, her outfits were fucking horrendous in this one.
Terrible.
Every outfit was awful. And then they like had to go and over-sexualize her too, where literally every moment that they could, they were trying to remind you that she's hot and she's the one that you're supposed to like, where she kisses every dude to thank them for helping her, right? Where she takes off her shirt for bath time and is just there in a bra, because that's how I fucking bathe my baby.
Yeah.
Like, and then there's the scene where she's in Bill Murray's house, or his apartment, and he walks in and she's in a towel and she's like, oh, whatever, it's fine. Like, I would not want my ex, who like was an asshole and I left. Like, she made the choice to leave because he was being an asshole and treating her like shit. Like, I wouldn't want him to see me practically naked. And she just acts like she's wearing just a dress.
Well, the whole thing, like, her character is just shitty because it's so unbelievable. Like, none of it makes sense. The whole plot of like her and Bill Murray getting back together, or like attempting to, but it's bogus at best. It's not interesting or good because it doesn't make sense. And then this is not even the same character we're familiar with. Again, every choice she's making is like, no, that's not.
And she doesn't even. I would argue she doesn't really make choices, because she doesn't she doesn't want to see Peter, and he just shows up and tries to charm his way into her life. Another ghost is fucking harassing her, and decides that now that they've had her like, the ghosts have had her physical form, now they want her baby, right? Because that's all women are, is their bodies and their babies. So cool. Like, everything here is not a choice. It's men controlling her and making these choices for her under the guise of she has a choice. So like, it's just really sad, and it really bothers me too. Like, the whole thing with Peter, where she pretends not to care about him, but is like, oh my god, does he ask about me? And then she like starts to fall for him because she sees him with Oscar. And then like, when you look at how Peter reacts with the baby, he doesn't give a shit about that baby at all. Like, first of all, he calls Dana my Dana. So he's still trying to project that ownership onto her. And then he tells the kid, he's like, I should have been your dad, trying to like instill that in the kid. When he's telling the baby goodnight, he's being a fucking asshole to him, and it's supposed to be cute. He skips out on, like, he gets a lead on what could be like going for the baby, what could be stalking the baby, and he just fucking forgets about it. And he like willfully says, no, we're not going to deal with that right now, because I might get laid, I might get back in this, so I'm going to go over here, which is so fucked up, because then he's like actually confronted with it with the Ghostbusters come in, and Dana's like, what the fuck do you mean? You didn't tell me about this, after giving this like speech about how he's the most charming, kindest, unusual man, and how she broke up with him not because he was an asshole, but because she was protecting herself. And he's like trying to be like, oh yeah, reform me, mommy, I just need somebody here 24/7, like a fucking gross person that he is. But like, in that moment, she immediately forgives him. Like, I'm sorry, this is her son, this is her child, this is presumably all that she has in the world. Why the fuck is he going to be like, why is he going to do that? Fucking why is he going to be forgiven immediately?
Well, here's the thing. Like, he canonically, historically, and within this world is a big sack of shit. Like, he sucks. He's historically been like this big asshole who is rewarded obviously just because he's a straight white guy, like in this story, and he's charming, and charming is the thing that apparently is like makes him likable. And it's like, well, no, he's a bad person, but whatever.
And the way he's charming is just putting everybody
That's the thing
beneath
is,
him.
It's like negging, and it's like derogatory charm where it's like, even with the baby, again, I made notes of that too, of like, I bet your daddy's really ugly, huh? You're only cute. Like, what are you doing? Like, this is such a weird self-pitying thing. Like, you have such low self-confidence, so much so that you're in the room with this child attempting to neg a child who cannot speak English because you think so lowly of yourself. You think, I mean, this is all the actions of a person who feels worthless, it seems. Not to not to disregard or like excuse it at all, but my biggest issue with it is like, and this, I'm not trying to like be like, let's stop. This movie shouldn't exist because like none of these characters, like nothing makes sense. The whole Dana stuff, I'm like, that's not Dana. This is fake. Him coming back and that whole romance, I'm like, this is not, like, nothing feels right. The bad guy, I'm like, okay, I don't care. And then fucking, they do the same thing with the only black lead in this that they did with the other one, where I'm like, haven't you learned from this? Like, he's at the beginning where they're talking about, like, they're at the birthday party and it's like, oh, we should whatever, the birthday party and blah. And then he like disappears when they're doing all the construction stuff. And then when they're in the courtroom, and then he's like not back until later when they're having to do a fight, kind of. And you're
he's
like,
not even in the commercials.
He's
like,
not even in the commercials.
I just realized that, and I was like, oh my God, like he is the lawyer and the receptionist have more of a character arc and are in this movie more than the fourth Ghostbuster.
They did it again. They just did it again and worse this time. And that's what the movie feels like. Except now there's cum and mommy issues. And that's like the only difference between this and the first one is that it's worse. And there's more cum and mommy issues. And it breaks like, not that I'm being like, Ghostbusters 2 needs to be the pinnacle of cinematic culture, or like needs to be the pinnacle of like social commentary. Not at all. But it sucks. It's like not good. And for all of these reasons, like the more time I spend with Bill Murray's characterizations, or the idea of Bill Murray as he's presented in all of these different IP, because largely he's kind of doing that same character to different degrees of charm or assholeness. He's kind of doing the same character like most actors, or a lot of actors have that thing, and that's his thing. The more time I spend with that character, the more I'm like, how did he get all this stuff? Because like, he's so unlikable. He's so unlikable, and he's so shitty, and he's just like, I guess it makes sense because he's kind of an everyman in the way that he's like awful, and he's so like he's literally doing the bare minimum for biggest reward, hopefully, of like being the worst possible person to get the biggest unreachable thing, and every time is going to get it because he just assumes he will. And you're like, I guess that makes sense, especially being a cis-het white guy. Cool, so I guess that tracks. But I had such a hard time with this movie.
He is like even worse to women in this movie. Like, I mean, in general, this film hates women and is just fucking way worse to all women. But like, every woman that he sees, he has to like make some fucking comment about her, where he's still discrediting them, still being an asshole. He has these like off comments where he wants a potion to make women totally submissive, where he is insinuating that Egon should bang his students, right? Where he calls the lawyer in court a kitten while he's fucking on trial and she's burying him, right? And of course he gets off, like, you know, off that charge. So like, it's fine. Like, we don't take her seriously. And then like, even the fucking Statue of Liberty, he was like, I wonder if she's naked under that toga. Like,
she's French, you know that?
Yeah, and it's like it's a fucking statue. It's a fucking statue.
But
like,
also
what the
way
fuck are you doing?
The way that in that moment too, like, oh, she's French, you know, implying that she has body hair, and that like, oh, here's a warning. Be careful with this naked woman's body, this object. It has body hair, so like, ew, nasty, gross. Like, that's the implication. What the fuck? Like, what a dumb, bad joke, but also like, what?
Yeah.
What?
And then yeah, like, just everything that comes out of his mouth is just really awful. This character is even worse than he was in the last one. I think everything in this story is worse than the last one. At least like the last one, like, some of the other characters were fun, right?
Again,
and in this
all
one,
of Dana's stuff. All of Dana's stuff was great. Like in the first one, at least there's that. At least
and
there's some
Janine,
cool stuff.
Janine was great, the receptionist. In this one, she just wants to be a mommy and fuck on the couch. Like that's literally it.
Again, mommy issues and cum. And going back to cum, the main back to cum. The main thing that they're trying to tell us about like the hurdles about the struggle in this film is that like cum brain makes men want to fight and sort of makes ghosts bad, but it also is the bringer of life. And you're like, okay, I get it. I get that this is like a big
attitude and how you look at it.
And I get that it's just a big dick joke. Like this movie's just a big dick joke. It's a big cum joke. Like that's all it is. Because again, they're covered in cum. They get out of the sewer and it's like, I'm gonna fucking fight. It's like, no, it's the cum. It's making us do this. And then obviously the spraying of the cum inside the Statue of Liberty. And she's like, suddenly see, and starts walking across the ocean. And you're like,
and she's brought to literally the Statue of Liberty is brought to life and is given life from this cum being shot. And we are
arguably same.
I mean, yeah. But like, okay, the reason we're calling it cum is because for people that have not watched the movie, like we didn't before this pod, they go into the sewer and they are they find this ancient slime river that like when they are covered in it and confused, they're angry and they're very mad and stuff, right? And then later on, they take a sample back to the lab, and Egon and Ray are trying to figure out how to charge it or how it works, right? What happens. And so they're talking about how they know that it can be charged negatively, and they're trying to charge it positively by playing it music, by and the things that they're trying to do to it, by the way, are the things that you're told to like do to a baby, like back in those days, especially. So they're playing it music, they're reading to it, and then they fuck it. Like there's a line where they're like, where it is just fucking clear that these two men fucked the slime because they thought it would make it happy. And they thought it would make it positive. And then when they decide to harness the energy of the slime, the guns that they use to distribute the slime, it looks like they're coming. Like it's not even just it's not like a water gun. It's not a water gun. It literally looks like somebody's coming all over this thing.
It's a big dick gun. Yeah.
And then at the end, the only time, and I love this, the only time men can actually be happy is when they're covered in happy cum and they had a purpose and they knew what they were doing. And that's the only time that they can be nice to each other is when they're covered in cum.
When they're covered in cum, which, I mean, arguably.
Which I was like, okay, I like
same.
that.
I mean, same. I don't want to get too graphic on here. This is no, it's not. Well, whatever. Who cares?
This
Anyways,
is our most
happy cum, love being covered in cum. Anyways, but I also wanted, like, if you haven't seen the movie, yes, it's a river of slime, but also if we're looking at its texture and color, it is opalescent. It is pearl-esque. It is
it's just pink. That's how they decided to make that to differentiate. That was just
it's
to
literally
give it a
just pink cum.
tinge of pink. Yeah.
Yes, but apart from that, it is very reminiscent of a very familiar fluid, and it's just the cum movie, Jess. It's the cum movie. Like, literally, the fact that they go into the Statue of Liberty and they're making all these comments about, like, oh, she's this big hot girl, big hot French girl, like, whatever. Oh, my God, we're inside this girl. Then they just spray all the cum inside her. And you're like...
And then she's like, oh, my God, I'm so ready. Let me go.
And then she comes to life.
Which we can argue that the Statue of Liberty, getting them in to save Dana, is women saving women. But I mean,
true.
I'm just kidding.
I mean, it's
that was supposed to be funny. I'm not that funny. It's fine.
No. Well, just because also like the insignificance of men and how like ultimately it is women saving women. Yes, but this movie's so not thoughtful or smart or interesting. And who is the fuck is this bad guy? What is his deal? He's like a meaningless, powerless, like they're just doing a fucking hereditary bullshit where they're trying to steal the baby so he can inhabit the baby's body and use that as his sort of corporal form in this new flesh and become the ruler of the world or whatever. And it's so boring. It's like the most basic boring thing. And how are we going to tie into that? Oh, body snatch thing. What if it's her kid and it's mommy? And like,
why did he need that baby? Like, that didn't make sense. And I feel like
no, he could
the
have had
art
any other
director-
child easier, and it would have made more sense for a different kid than somebody who is affiliated with the only people, arguably, who could stop him.
Yeah. And it didn't make sense to me that the art director, who is definitely like queer coded, right? Like,
Yeah.
it didn't make sense to me that like they were trying to force that love story and trying to vilify queerness, right? And but still while pushing, like, making his storyline so heteronormative.
Well, that's the thing.
It's like he decides that he's going to give the baby up for ownership, literal ownership of Dana. Again, Dana doesn't have a choice in this. She is, again, going to be the mother of evil.
As far as the queer coding, it's truly and simply, it's just like a gay joke, sort of, the villainy of this sort of queer coded character. And it's not even necessarily queer coded only in the sense that he is a male presenting person who is more effeminate and a little bit softer. But that all plays into that same stigma and stereotype for like anti-queerness. This idea that like, oh, he's bad because he's a man or a male presenting person and is also weak. And the weakness is only derived from his performance of feminist. And so this like, isn't he so pitiful going after this woman, thinking he can have sex with this woman? Look at this pitiful femme man. And it's one of the most boring takes for villainry, at least if you're going to queer code your villains, make them interesting. But this is a base level first thought, like, oh yeah, it's also a straight cis male thought of like, God, what if we gave the weak guy the one and he's bad? And it's like, what makes him weak? Oh, what if he was girly? Like, that's the whole thing. And it goes back to like anti-homosexual, anti-queerness, and it goes back to like just general homophobia and all of the shit attached to that. And of course the Ghostbusters are being homophobic in this, of course. Or I mean, granted, in the way that it's written, of course they are, because it's a bunch of like, is this arguably like Ghostbusters are in the same world as like Animal House and like that kind of like, yeah, bros, just whatever and fucking who cares, and we're just gonna fuck chicks and beat up like, you know what I mean? It's just like, nothing matters, I'm a guy, and like fart jokes, and you're like, all right, go on. So there's nothing surprising about the way that they vilified or they made this villain so effeminate and so queer coded, like to me. And it also just adds to that level of like this movie is so bad because like, at least to me, and here, check this out, and I'm not like saying like, yeah, if you're gonna bully me, like do it well, but like if you're gonna bully me, do it well. You know what I mean? Like, if you're gonna queer code your villain, spend some time figuring out how to portray to us that, like, I don't know, how to use a hard F word in this. Like, really pack a punch, because this is the most boring version of this. Like, okay, he's bad and weak because he's effeminate. That's it. Whatever. Like, it's so boring.
Like, that's supposed to be bad. That's his badness, right?
Yeah.
Is that he's different, he's queer, he is sassy, right? He has opinions, and he's
in
artistic.
art.
Yeah, exactly. He has an accent, so you know he's
European, so he's gay, and you're like,
he's European, right? But like, meanwhile, like, that's supposed to be looked at as less than, or as like, kind of, or like vilifying them already, right? Whereas our heroes are fucking the slime that they brought as an experiment. And then the experiments that we see Egon doing at the beginning, where Egon is literally doing experiments to see if like human emotion can physically affect the environment around them, which, like, I feel like that was, we didn't really need that, but it's like, okay, this sets up the premise for like
them screaming at a cup of cum.
Yeah, sure. But like, he is like testing this like couple that's already on the rocks. Like, he's causing them to have a divorce just for the sake of science, right?
Oh yeah.
And then the young girl, he gives her a puppy and takes it away just to see like what's gonna happen. And it's like, Egon is an asshole. And so like, moving into the next film, like, In the first one, I don't remember very well, but I think I liked Egon. I was like, okay, cool.
Well,
and
he
in
was
this
better.
one,
He was better because he was the one who kind of like called out Bill Murray a little bit for the test. It was like, hey,
yes.
fucking stop. And you're like, oh, cool. Egon gets it. Sick. Yes.
And he's
100%.
like all science and does the thing. Yeah, I liked Egon in the first one. This one, they undid everything that I liked about him. And then they tried to bring it back in Afterlife. And that was a point that really didn't sell that we'll get into.
I have so much to say about Egon in Afterlife.
Yeah, 100%. But yeah, so like we're supposed to see queer as automatically bad, but see fucking slime as super okay. And being a creep and inserting yourself into a space where you are not wanted, Bill Murray, because he's rewarded for it, right? And he actually, that's what she wants. When she said no, she meant yes. But like, that's supposed to be okay. That behavior is okay because that is the every cishet man, right? And anything outside of that, whether you're a woman, whether you're queer, whether you're not white, it doesn't matter. Like, Bill Murray also has like racist lines in this where he's like, well, you're not going to get a green card with that line. And then like the mayor refuses to shake Winston's hand, and it's Winston's hand. It's not Bill or anybody that's like, one of the main Ghostbusters. And I was like, this is racist. This is awful.
Yeah. Like that green card line. And again, it's one of the supposed to be like kind of funny, a little like, ooh, a little risque lines from Peter, from Bill Murray's character, that it's not really risque and it's not really funny. It's just like, oh, you're just kind of like a conservative piece of shit. Like you're just, you're spewing this like conservative rhetoric, not necessarily as a joke. It's kind of ambiguous. Obviously it's like intended to be that way, but it doesn't read as a joke. It simply reads as like oh, this was awkward and let me say something racist. And you're like, oh fuck, man. Like it's just not, it's not interesting and it's not good and it doesn't land. It's not well done. Not to say that like good racist jokes are well done. No, but in this instance, it's just like.
And again, like when we're talking about making women and queer people the butt of every joke or, just powerless or evil, we are supposed to be rooting for the Ghostbusters who have gone bankrupt, right? They're like, oh, well, we can't hunt ghosts because we don't have any money or whatever, right? Like, this movie is really interesting because it, like, the first one was like, we don't have any money, but whatever, we're doing this, we're here. And it didn't feel like it was as much for a paycheck as this one, where in this one, it is absolutely clear that they are capitalist, and it is absolutely clear that they are not interested in helping people and helping the community just because they can. The only reason they give a shit about what's happening right now is because it's Dana. That's the only reason, because they have a tie to that. But like, they don't care about anybody else unless there's money involved. So they're helping for money to a problem that they've created. And in that, they're living and glorifying the past in a way where it's like, why are you trying to praise this? Oh, it's because you had a moment where you just had a lot of money for this. But yeah, they're not interested in just helping people or helping the community with these like very real problems from the first one, right? They're like, just fucking pay me, man.
I mean, they're arguably just like sad guys. Mm-hmm. Sad guys who've like created a problem and say that's not a like.
And I want to say, look at their mistakes either, right? Because they destroyed half of New York, and they were pissed about getting stuck with that bill. But they were also like, man, wasn't that the time? Weren't those the days? And it's like, you literally did all of this without any consideration of, and this is something that I think of like Marvel is starting to talk about a little bit, which is cool, where it's like, sure, you saved the world from these aliens or from this like supernatural presence, but in doing so, you also destroyed the city and you destroyed lives, and somebody has to be responsible for that. You can't just get a free pass because you helped save us, right? Because there has to be some sort of accountability, which is also really interesting when we're talking about that, because I really love, one thing I did love in this movie was the portrayal of cops and judges and politicians. So like the entire justice system and the entire, like all politicians and everything, I was like, great, they're awful, they're corrupt, and they're terrible, and they just want their problems to go away. Cool. But yeah, I think it's just so interesting that we're talking about accountability, but we're supposed to not want them to be held accountable for anything that they did, or like have to like prove how they tried to mitigate damage or anything. Because at that point, they weren't concerned. They just wanted to get the marshmallow dude. They just wanted to get Gozer, you know?
Yeah, it's I feel like any attempt that I'm having to sort of like realistically justify the choice, like, and again, this just goes back to like me being like, this movie shouldn't exist. Like anything I try to justify, I'm just like, this is just an overblown SNL sketch that got cut for time.
Yeah.
Is what it feels like. It's like not of this world. Or obviously not of this world. None of it feels real or realized. It's too long. It doesn't make sense. And the butt of the joke, the main joke is, oh, haha, come, and also mommies. And you're like, oh, yeah, I see why that sketch got cut.
And it's awful because, like, what I love about the idea about Ghostbusters is the idea of Ghostbusters is the look, is the costumes, is the premise. Like on paper, without these performances or these choices, like this is what Ghostbusters are and this is what they do and this is where they're at. Like the firehouse is this. It's like, that's really fucking cool. Like that is really awesome. And so when I saw, because I had not seen the original Ghostbusters in a fucking minute, when I saw the 2016 version, I was like, this is Ghostbusters to me. This is Ghostbusters, because I remember it being, you know, a little bit fun. I remember it looking great. I remember the wacky costumes and the crazy car and stuff like that. And I love that. And I think that is so fun and so cool. And then watching the original text, I'm like, they failed. They failed.
Well, also, similarly, like with all of these movies that we talk about, it's all contextually based. And I know that the big conversation that we have with director's cut, Answer the Call versus theatrical cut of Answer the Call has everything to do with the deletion of a character. And that changes the complete motive of the main character, which in the theatrical release makes it make very little sense. But with his character added, it's like, oh, that's why she did this. That's why this happened. That's why this scene takes place. Whereas without him and without any mention of him, it's like none of these choices make sense. This movie has one of those characters. Eugene Levy was cast as Rick Moranis' cousin, and he worked at the mental institution that they get sent to, and his whole subplot is he's the one who gets them out.
Really?
But they took him out completely and just said they get to come out, and that's it. So he was cast, they shot it, he's in it, and that's why there's sort of a visual gag, not a gag, but like a, Easter egg. When the ghosts come to life and everyone's running out of the theater, Eugene Levy's name is on the marquee. And I was like, that's so, why is Eugene Levy's name on there? Like, that's strange. It's a film that he was in, but it's like highlighted so prominently in this. I was like, he's not in this movie. That's so strange.
That's so wild.
Yeah, he was technically in this movie, but his character got completely scrapped before they released it. So I think that that's an interesting notion of like, granted, with his addition, would that have changed much? Who knows? Probably not. But just in the context of like, there was a whole subplot with him written into this story that we literally just never knew about and never saw. But it is inarguable, at least with this series, and at least from what we've discussed with the original Ghostbusters and this Ghostbusters, despite all of that, the text itself, the writing, the choices, and the intention are still bad. Like, no amount of like redacted characterizations or characters or subplots can really change like the core essence of Peter as being a misogynist, racist trash can. These are not likable characters or good characters, and what they do to every character who is not a cishet white guy, it's literally the wrong choice and echoes the ethics of those who are writing it, which is this core group. And it's not good. It's bad, and it's a bad choice, and it's just reflective of their own viewpoints. And if not that, it's like, oh, well, it's supposed to be funny. It's like, well, that isn't a joke, and or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I get it. Absolutely. This movie was awful.
Yes, it was awful. They reshot the last 25 minutes of the movie after it tested poorly. So what we got was the reshoot, and even then it's like, and also
really?
the kid also in the birthday party scene at the beginning, who's like, whatever to the Ghostbusters.
Who hates the Ghostbusters? What's up? Shout out that kid.
Yeah, that's Ivan Reitman, the director of Afterlife.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, sorry, Jason Reitman. Ivan Reitman directed and wrote the first two. Jason Reitman directed and wrote Afterlife. So it is just and we'll talk about that more. But because he is the son of the director and at that time was a child, he got cast as the part of the insufferable kid at the party who says, fuck the Ghostbusters, essentially. And that is the director of Afterlife, which is the movie we're about to go into. So should we do it?
Sure.
Yeah. Let's do the next one.
Let's do it. OMG.
Cool.
It's 2021 now, and Egon has a lonely life in Somerville, Oklahoma, where he is killed by supernatural forces. Oh no! He leaves all his possessions to Callie, his daughter he never met in person, who is currently under financial distress. Unfortunately for her, Callie inherited a dirt farm, tons of debt, and a practically condemned house. Cool, Dad. Her kids, Phoebe and Trevor, are miserable and struggle to fit in. Phoebe eventually makes friends with a conspiracy theory-obsessed kid named Podcast, because he has a podcast, and her summer school teacher, Gary Gruberson, while Trevor takes his chances with a very unavailable Lucky Domingo. Podcast shows Phoebe the town's abandoned mine that has weird ruins, and the two decide to hunt ghosts after Phoebe stumbles on her grandpa's old ghost-busting gear and does a deep dive on Google. They find a ghost and chase it with Trevor, who fixed up the Ecto-1 even though he can't drive, destroyed half the town in true Ghostbuster fashion, and got arrested, also in Ghostbuster fashion. Also, Gary starts to date Callie. Weird.
After the kids get out of jail, Trevor and Lucky get clued in on details surrounding Grandpa Ghostbuster and his pals, and they all head back to the mine where they find a different section of the ruins that includes a pit of souls and a body belonging to the man that built the original skyscraper the Ghostbusters fought Gozer at because, oh man, it turns out Gozer is coming back in a big way right here in 2021. Callie and Gary are the new Keymaster and Gatekeeper. Gozer comes back. There's a big fight. The kids try to trap Gozer. The remaining OG Ghostbusters show up. The ghost of Egon shows up. Everyone's finally happy, and the world is saved. Oh, and Peter married Dana, and Winston is rich. Fiend. So...
Right off the bat, I hate this movie, and you always know how much I hate a movie based on a section of my notes, which, when it's good, there's not a section that's titled Why that takes up at least a half a page. And like with Matrix Resurrections, there is an entire, at least half of a page, 3/4 of a page, that is just simply titled Why.
So I do want to start this and just address the biggest elephant in the room. Yes, in fact, podcasts are named after this character. This character is actually canonically the inventor of podcasts, which is why it has that name. Because he had a radio show and his name, his USB stick, exactly. Which easiest way to listen to podcasts, as you know, is sharing it via thumb drive.
I had to stop the film when that happened, and I was like my notes literally say, no, this kid's name is not Podcast. No.
I thought it was a joke, and then they continued, and his name's just Podcast, and you're like, okay. And it also perpetuates that, like, the only Asian character is, like, this, like, tech guy in the same way that Data was. It's that same trope, which is gross. Also, all of the characters of color who are sidekicks and cops, which, okay, don't have real names. It's like podcast and Lucky. And you're like, oh, what it just seems icky, whatever. I want to say off the bat, as a whole, this movie is hard fine. I think generally, and here's the kicker, and I know people are going to be like, whatever. I think it's more cinematic than any other Ghostbusters film.
I 100% agree with that.
Okay, cool.
But there's nothing happening in the movie to make me interested in watching it. It seemed cinematically much better, but also way more boring.
But I will say, I enjoyed the first half of the film pretty intently. I think once the story gets wacky and then it's like, oh, we're doing Keymaster and whatever again, fine. That's where it kind of loses me, and then it, like, we skip a few scenes that, like, should have been there and they weren't, and then you're like, what? And then it ends and you're like, what? And then the guys come back and you're like, what? And then it's like, he's a dad, but he's dead, and he's a ghost, and he gets to be a real dad again. It's like, I love my daddy. And you're like, what? No, he's a bad dad. Shut up. Like, stop. what are you doing?
Oh my God.
And then it's just off the rails and it's a mess. But I will say, I really did enjoy thoroughly classic film first half of this movie where it is cinematic, there's struggle, blah, blah, blah. Anyways, is it
See,
bad?
I
Okay.
didn't like it because I could see what they're going for, and for me it didn't hit because of a couple reasons. One, I thought the characterization of everybody in this movie was fucking awful. I thought that the daughter, Phoebe, and Tyler was awful. Phoebe is basically young Sheldon more so than she is like Egon, which is like not great, and made me not like her. And then the son is just a fucking asshole who's like literally just like trying to do the Bill Murray thing of putting a smiley face under experience and flirting and being like, hey, but I can get a job, right? And he fails his driver's test like 3 times, and he's like actively going after a woman that is unavailable, which Bill Murray did in the first one.
The same. Yeah.
So I really didn't like him. I thought his performance was awful and gross. But also, like, the mom was also shitty. Like, nobody was nice in this except, like, Paul Rudd. Paul Rudd was like,
Yeah.
but he was the most talented actor on this entire film. And I think it's because they just said be Paul Rudd. And everybody else felt like it was a made-for-TV movie to me. And I didn't root for anybody because I didn't like anybody. Because it's like, okay, well, Egon was an asshole and a terrible dad. Why would I root for anybody around him? And then the mom was an asshole to the kids. Like, what does she say? She says, so her husband left because he couldn't connect with the daughter. So we're making her marriage end because of the daughter. Cool. Basically had a bad life, and it was ruined by men, by her dad, by her husband, and by her children. So she has no joy and she has nothing because her family and everybody she's ever cared about suck. And the kids are even being an asshole to her about like, you have no money. I thought you fucking handled this. And it's like, why is everybody being such a fucking entitled asshole to each other? Like, it is so bad.
Yeah, that's also something that I've thought about and grappled with, especially watching it the second time. None of them are likable. And again, like, at least make our star likable. And what kind of bothers me too is like, I just don't like that they justify her like unlikability as autism in this way that feels really like
Icky.
kind of nasty. Like, oh, well, I'm just like, I'm cold because I'm autistic. And you're like,
and she literally
okay.
has to say that. She has to say, I don't exhibit emotions the same way everybody else does. And she's just a condescending asshole to literally everybody.
And to me, the thing is if you're going to already have that conversation, which it's here, you need to handle it with way more care than a one-off line and an unlikable character. Like, not to say that, like, again, she doesn't have to be anything, but at least in this context, you can't just throw it away with a single line. Like, that's too, and it's not to be like, this is a story about autism. No, but your lead is clearly this. You've written her as such. That is who this character is. Throwing it away for an audience that quickly and that simply, it's like, autism isn't that simple. It felt gross. It felt irresponsible and
uninformed.
It felt for the sake uninformed, and it also felt like sort of low key for a laugh. Like,
yeah,
like it kind of played.
It reminded me of Billy from Power Rangers. That characterization.
Yeah, literally. It's just like a poorly unresearched, unnuanced, unempathetic shoehorning of a character with autism, and it just it didn't make sense, and it also is just so, it was bad. It was bad. I hated that line. I was just like, no, we're not, you get no points for this. Like, I know you're trying to like get points, and it's fuck off. It's gross. It's just nasty. I really did wish Phoebe was like not nice. I feel like reducing it to just like, I wish she was nicer feels icky also, just to be like, I wish she was nicer, this sweet little girl. It feels a little condescending and a little whatever, but like truly, like the scene when she goes into the back room with Paul Rudd after the earthquake and he's like, oh, it's this. She's like, do you think I'm a fucking idiot? And he's like, oh, for sure. Like, what? And then her joke, I mean, I know it's setting up the tension for the joke of like, don't be obtuse. And then she does that like wonky wink as a way to try to like throw in humor. But it also doesn't land. And it feels like, wait, who is this asshole kid?
It doesn't land in the moment, right? And it also doesn't land as an audience member. Like us watching this, it does not land in any way. It's just a really unthoughtful take on this character. It's a very one-sided take of this character. And that's why, to me, I was like, this is just a young Sheldon. Like,
yeah,
this is what this
really
is.
Was.
And I got that right off the bat, and I was like, oh, fuck this.
You know what, Jess? The more we talk about this, the more I'm disliking all of these parts, 100%. And rightfully so, because I do feel this way, I think. And now that we're discussing it, I'm like opening that box. But even like it is just like a toxic trash heap of like unresolved emotions and like badness, which some families are like that. But also in this case, it's like these kids are treating her like she's like whatever. And then even when Paul Rudd shows up and he says something and she's like, oh yeah, nothing in this house except my dying soul or something. Like she's this like kind of immature, pitiful jerk in this way. And it's just like, oh, is that what I smell? She's like, well, it wasn't dinner. And I know she's trying to be like funny and cute. And I like that as a way to just be like, I'm not cooking for you. Sure. But it does feel more of like a fuck my life and fuck my kids situation, which is like,
well, yeah, and they're like, oh, there's no bars here. And she's like, there better be a fucking bar here. And it's like, oh, ha, 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 right? Like, mom is miserable and wants to go drink at the bar even though she has no money. And she's pissed. Like, her whole unresolved tension with her dad. Like, I like the idea of Egon being a shitty dad. Like, I'm here for that,
Same.
Right? I'm not here for him just bailing on his friends and stuff, or how dismissive it tracks. The Ghostbusters are super dismissive all the time, even in the first two movies, of everything. They don't believe anybody, even Dana, when she has these experiences. So like, sure, but like with the mom specifically, when she's talking about her relationship with her dad or lack thereof, right? You can see that she's just pissed and she's only here because she thinks he has money. He doesn't have money, fucking whatever. And like, I don't understand. Like, she has this good moment, which is, I think, the only cool moment, where she's like, because her whole character is like about unreconciled feelings and just having everything happen to her. Like, and supposedly that is because she had no daddy, right? Which I think it is possible to not turn out that way when you don't have a father figure around. So that's another stereotype, right? But she says, she's talking to the kids, and this is her only like real line, where she says, I'm glad you found yourself here, but this is all a reminder that he didn't care about me. So like, her kids are finally doing well, and she's like trying to say like, I am happy for you and this is great for you, but like literally this whole place is just reminding me that he left me for nothing.
She's saying that to the kids?
Yeah, she says that to the kids when they're like, it's a moment where they're talking about, or they're like stoked to be there, and she's like, I'm not here for this. And then her reconciliation with those feelings comes from finding out that her dad stalked her. And it's like that whole really boring trope of daddy wasn't there, but he was off saving the world, or daddy wasn't there, but he always loved you and always cared about you. You can still care about people. I mean, clearly his mechanism to keep the souls down in under was working. He could have taken a vacation and raised his daughter. Who's the fucking mom? Because Janine and him were going to hook up, but I guess then she hooked up with a lawyer. But like, she never talks about her mom. Her mom isn't there to help her. Her mom isn't like a part of the equation. It's just her daddy issues, because Ghostbusters is about men, is about women should want to be close to men, right? So she finds this wall of all of the pictures of her, which who is sending him these pictures, right? And these like notes of like graduated, did this, did that. And it's like, he's like piecing together her life without being there. And I don't think that's touching. I think that's cowardice. And I think that's awful. And I think that is doing the least. And I think that if anything is doing more harm than good. And you do not get points for marking things on a calendar and not picking up the fucking phone. You don't get points for not being there and like caring this whole time. Fuck that. If you care, you would be a part of your daughter's life. And all that serves to do is just to show that he still thought that he was okay and that he was a good person because he was justified in his leaving and he still knew what was happening.
It's so funny because when Eric and I first watched this exact part, almost at the same time, we both audibly were like, He's still a bad dad.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Like, we know what the movie's trying to do. It's trying to set up this like, oh, but he cared and he was there from afar and blah, blah, blah. And it's like,
That
no.
doesn't work.
He's still a bad dad. And then I hate that the resolve at the end is like his ghost shows up and she's like, Dad? And like he's helping save the day. And it's supposed to like help her resolve her daddy issues. It's like, no. He sucked. What are you talking about? He wasn't in her life. He like left. And again, he's really just stalking her. Like, pick up a fucking phone. Call. Go visit. You're not that far away. Like, what is keeping you from your daughter's life? And at that point, I'm like, it's like, oh, well, if I have to save the world, then don't have kids. Sorry. Don't have fucking kids. You absolute fool. If you aren't, it made me so mad. It made me so mad because it's like you don't get to justify this behavior for nostalgia's sake because at the end they all come back and it's like, oh, my daddy was cool and a hero. No, you don't get to justify that. He was a bad dad. That's the whole premise of this movie is that he was a bad dad. You do not rectify it well in the story, so he maintains and still is a bad dad. End of story. That's all it is.
And a bad friend. He had no friends. He had no family. He was literally not missed by anybody. The Ghostbusters couldn't really give a shit less if he died or not, right? Like, I don't like I get that, you know, the actor that played Egon passed away, and so
yes,
they still wanted to represent him in this movie, but I do think that there was a much better way, in the same way that they could have shown autism in a more thoughtful light. This could have been a really cool storyline, but instead it's just the most boring, simplest first pass take at what it looks like for a man to care about somebody from afar, like, or how he's still a good daddy even though he's not in her life, like. And that's
the hugest thing is like I just bare minimum. It's like the bar could not be lower for men. Like he gets his hallelujah, essentially. He gets his saving grace. He gets his redemption arc for having done what? Like truly, like what did he do to redeem himself? He died an estranged father and a bad friend, but because of our memory of him and because he had her pictures, suddenly it's like, oh no, he was good. No, like that's bad. That doesn't make any sense.
It also like
toxic.
The way that it's overshadowed is this movie is still about men, even though it's got women leads, right?
Yeah.
It's about like because Egon's ghost shows Phoebe what to do and where to go and stuff like that. Doesn't connect with his daughter, by the way, in that he connects with the granddaughter. And like the family, at no point did they talk about anything. Like, I mean, she could have been like, Mom, check this out. Check out this basement, like with all this stuff. Or like the son was how was he fixing up cars when he failed his driver's test 3 times? How does he even know how to work on cars?
Literally.
Like not even like Google Ghostbusters or whatever, right? Like because he sees all of this. And how did they know how all of those gadgets were and what they did and turned that like ghost trap into a mobile thing in like 5 minutes? Okay. But at any point they could have just talked to each other and been like, oh cool, and come together and like had that montage scene where they're exploring and finding all this out and piecing this all together. And then like that also is a way to bring the family together and to help reconcile her relationship with her dad and their relationship with the grandfather they never knew. That was fucking there. That was right there. That could have been done in 3 fucking minutes.
Jess, that is literally my biggest point in this. That's literally what I wanted the most out of this film. Is they set it up like she's a bad mom, they're bad kids, she had a bad father, generational trauma, it's cyclical, we get it, bad parent to bad parent to bad parent. This is a film about reconciliation and ending a cycle. That's what the movie's about. Where was the scene? Where was the scene? Where was the scene for that? Because truly, even you mentioned a line earlier about in front of the kids, she was like, I'm happy for you, but what about me? And in my head, I'm like, oh, she's a bad mom. Like, right. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. But like, you cannot blame your kids or take your kids' joy, internalize it, and selfishly make you the victim in their joy. Like, fuck off. That is so selfish and that is so manipulative for your kids. Gross. It's nasty. Like, no, just straight up,
Yeah,
go to therapy.
straight up.
Like, just go to therapy.
She doesn't have the money to go to therapy.
And she didn't have the money to go to therapy. That's true. But even then, do not spew that venom back at your kids, because you know what they're going to learn? They're going to internalize it and be like, my happiness cannot exist when her happiness does not. My joy can't exist while hers doesn't exist. Like, they're going to internalize that.
Maybe that's why they're assholes to each other, because they've already internalized that behavior, because everybody sucks in this movie.
They're all toxic at each other. But to me, because it's a movie about breaking that cycle, like, where is the scene where she finally is just like, you know what? It's unfair of me to treat you guys like this, and it's unfair of me to put these things on you. Like, my dad wasn't there, and I was burdened with all the things that he couldn't give me, and I had to do these things myself. And by me doing this, I'm kind of doing the same thing to you guys, and I'm not there for you. I'm distancing myself. I'm putting money things on you. I'm putting emotional burdens on you. Like, I'm becoming the same bad parent that I resent. Where is that talk? Because to me, that would have justified all of the decisions by the mom and by the kids, and the way that their dynamic works. I mean, granted, Eric and I also, he brought up when the car thing happened, he was just like, when did he learn how to fix cars? Like,
yes. Like, see, my why section is so fucking big, because there's so many of these moments where it's like, where did this come from? Why did they need to break into the house? The key should have been given to them by the person that gave them the estate, you know, when that was settled. Why did the kids, like, the kids are competent and both incompetent at the same time, where they're able to fix cars and do this crazy mathematical equations and rewire a fucking house, like with electricity stuff, right? But then they're fucking awful when it comes to looking for signs of a ghost, which are literally fucking in front of them. And like, why would they also, because they are smart. Like, if you're trying to say that they're smart and that they're competent, then why would they go to the temple originally with no gear when they found all of the gear? Like, why would these kids make these choices?
None of it made sense.
Why is there a single ghost in town when there's like no ghosts exist, and they haven't been seen for years because of the contraption that Egon made that's like keeping them down, right? So there's a ghost. Where did that ghost come from there? Like, why are they there? How did they get out when it's like they made a point to say ghosts don't exist anymore and it's fine? It's so bad. Also, like, I feel like Paul Rudd's character was only there because we needed a keymaster, because the keymaster is always the one that has the dick. And two, he was there so he could literally tell Callie, hey, you're a good mom. It's okay. When she's fucking not. She's a fucking awful mom. And his character, like, got so much screen time, which is cool because I feel like that made the movie more enjoyable. And he had one of the best lines where it was, science is giving yourself the plague and gambling on a cure. Punk rock safety pin through the nipple of academia. Like, I was like, that's cute. I love that line. Yeah. But again, he was completely unnecessary. And so was Lucky. Like, so was the like body that was at the ruins.
J.K. Simmons.
Because like Gozer is the bad guy again, right? Which also I didn't realize that the old Ghostbusters, when they come back, they misgender Gozer. They keep referring to Gozer as she when they are very deliberate in saying it's they, not she. Gozer has no gender. So of course they misgender Gozer, right? Because they're awful and bad and boomers.
So speaking of J.K. Simmons, he has one line in this. He is the body in the thing. Famous, extraordinary actor J.K. Simmons. And Jess, you are going to hate me for this, or you're going to hate this idea. And you know what? It's just another tie-in to why we're doing this episode. And I'm really sorry that I have to say this. Jason Reitman has already teased a sequel to Afterlife where the villain is a return of the villain from Ghostbusters 2.
See, like, literally, we are just redoing Ghostbusters. Like earlier in the episode, like in our intro, you said that this is a new movie. This is not a remake. It is a fucking remake because we have the same fucking bad guy and we have the same fucking characters. It is remake. Like,
and if they were to do the sequel,
that fucking proves it.
Well, part of me also is like, they cast that character for a reason. It's J.K. Simmons. Why would you cast him for a one-liner? It's J.K. Simmons.
And then
you're not
like
casting him for one line
because they like break them in half.
Well, part of me is wondering if like the sequel has to do with maybe a timeline prequel to this one. And if they're bringing back that other one, maybe that painting is a part of his collection because he's obviously this rich man. He owns this painting. The painting is haunted. It's a haunted painting from the second one. I know. Bad. So that's been teased by Reitman himself. That
it doesn't deserve a sequel. This absolutely does not deserve a sequel.
No,
and I mean it's getting about the Ghostbusters like coming back. Who?
I mean, not to be like, do we have to?
No, we don't.
No, I mean, I want to, but I want to prove a point about how like insignificant and how silly their return was.
Oh, it absolutely is. And again, I think it just furthers the point that the Ghostbusters were always about money and never about like doing what is good and what is right, because their friend is telling them like, hey, there's a problem here. I see this, like, I have this thing. And his friends are like, no, you're lying. No, like, even after, I never understand why in movies, and Ghostbusters 2 did this, where, like, they didn't believe Dana and all. Why? When it has already been established that there are ghosts, when it has already been established that there are demons, or where, like, these types of things exist in this world, and you have a credible source, somebody that you know and somebody that you trust, why do you discredit them? Why don't you believe them? Is it because it's not convenient for you? Is it because, like, why are you like, oh no, you're lying, oh no, you're off your rocker this time? Like, what the fuck? Like, I fucking hate it when movies do that, because it's like, to me that doesn't seem at all accurate. Because if I were in that situation and somebody came to me and was like, hey, this is going to be like, cool, I'm there, like, don't worry, I've got your back. Like, not fuck you. And I mean, like, Egon takes off with literally all their stuff, but then they show up and they have all of their stuff.
Where'd they get it?
Where did they get it? Yeah.
It's pointless, Jess. It's so pointless, and it makes me so upset when they walk in and it's just like, oh, remember us? Remember when we tried to fuck you? And you're like, I okay, all right. You know what? No, go away. And then I hate that like justifies like the four of them, and I know it's like a nice send off. I know it's to justify the like foreshot of their of like them standing and like they have their guns again, and he's like holding Phoebe's gun, and it's like this loving, tender like granddaughter situation, and like, wow, and like what a good send off for our friend. And it even says for Harold right at the end, like that's the whole point of it. And I understand that, not to like shit on anybody's eulogy, but from a story, bullshit. It's bullshit, and it's bad. And
you
using
made him
that,
a bad dad. That was you like honoring his memory, was making him a fucking awful father.
Literally, you guys did that, not us. We're ingesting your content, and then for her to then like look and be like, "Wow, Dad," and like the visual of him helping the granddaughter in a problem that he created, like, is somehow justifiably redemptive, for the entirety of her life of being a bad father. It's bad. I like a lot of the visuals in this movie. I think the story is bad. Period. End of sentence.
I think I'm done with this movie.
Yeah, I'm also done.
Okay. We're back. We made it. Here we are.
We did it.
So, Eric.
Yes.
For Ghostbusters 2,
uh-huh,
who was that movie for?
Jess, it's not for anybody. It's not a movie. It's not for anybody. Okay, well, let me take that back. It's for people who love cum. But no, for real. It sucks. It's not. I don't know. Like, who is it for? Who is it for?
But people who like non-consensual cum.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Let me rephrase. It's a film for people who like cum pejorative.
Okay, that works.
Pejorative cum. My God. Okay. How many times have we said that in this episode?
I was going to say we should have a cum counter. Oh my God.
I know. Off the top, be like, and a lot of cum. Okay.
This is like our most X-rated episode, and it's not our fault.
It's not our fault. We're delivering the goods, and those goods happen to be guns full of cum.
Cum gun.
Yeah.
The cum gun.
Bang bang. I truly don't know who this was for, Jess.
Or skeet skeet.
Oh my God.
Sorry. Oh my God.
I
Okay, I'm going to bed right now.
know.
It's not my fault. Blame Ghostbusters 2. It's not my fault.
Well, okay, so I'm gonna say it's for nobody. Who do you think it was for?
God. I'm going to say that it was for... It's nobody. Because it's for
Right?
nobody. Like,
It's such an oddball film.
Like, there's literally nothing redeeming about it. It's for... It is...
Yeah.
Okay, no. It is for the studios because they wanted more money. It is a full-on cash grab. That is who this was for. This was for the executives' wallets.
I'll take that. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you like it?
No, it's not a good movie. It's not even funny. Like, at least if it was funny and bad, that'd be one thing. Again, at any point, if you're gonna underutilize or misuse Sigourney Weaver, I'm out. She's a star, and fuck them for that.
100%.
Yeah, I didn't like it. Did you?
Oh, I fucking hated this movie. I thought that at least, I mean, the original Ghostbusters, we know that it's problematic, but we still had like a little bit of a good time with it, and we would still rewatch it because of the nostalgia that like we feel for it. But like this one, no, never in a million years. I never want to see this movie again. The things that I did like about the original Ghostbusters, like the moments of charm that it might have had, or like, you know, Sigourney being awesome, or like all of that was taken away. And even like they made everybody into a pervert, and like not even like a fun pervert, or like just like really fucking gross, disgusting asshole perverts that like why am I going to watch them like just act so fucking entitled all over the screen? I don't need that. I mean, there's enough people like that in the world now. Why would this be my form of escapism? Why would I ever want to root for the Ghostbusters, who are just in general the worst people imaginable, that like literally are like infested in every part of our society right now? Why would I want that? Like, so yeah, no, I really, really, really dislike this movie. This is going to be a 1-star for me.
Yeah. I feel that. I completely feel that. I'm right there with you.
How about the 2022 Ghostbusters Afterlife? Was it new, interesting, or the same? Progressive, regressive? What are you feeling? What are you feeling, podcast? Oh my God, I meant to call you podcast this entire episode.
Hey, podcast.
And I just didn't. I'm so sorry. So podcast, what are you feeling?
I personally think that it's technically new because it came out later. I don't really think it's interesting, and I think it's the same. Like, I don't know. It's not. I think technically it's attempting to be progressive, and I mean, the throwaway line about like it's 2020, they're they or whatever, and you're like, okay.
And
but
then
on top of that,
the
like,
film goes and breaks that, like, literally the next scene.
Which again is just like, what is happening? And it's kind of a nothing movie too. So I don't really know how to describe it. It's not progressive or regressive because it didn't really change anything. Nothing's different, right?
Mm-hmm. No, I think you're right. Like, it's hard because it is 100% not interesting. I was not interested. I did not give a shit about anybody or anything. It was new because it's new, but the same. To me, it felt like a watered down version of a Ghostbusters, but just with better camera work. Like, so, and like a different color palette, you know? So it felt like we gave it a new paint job, and we took some high res photos instead of some, low res photos. And we also just, have like half of a script, but it's okay because somebody's going to buy this. Somebody's going to pay money for this. Like, so yeah, it's really hard because it didn't feel new, but it also didn't feel the same. It just felt like nothing in a lot of ways. And I think like it was trying to be progressive in a couple of things. Like, so it's like, oh, look at, we have an autistic character, or there's more people of color in this who are like, still tokenized. But like, and that's the thing, is it's like, so for everything that they were like, oh cool, we have, several characters of color, but they are still tokenized and still like podcast fighting the marshmallows, come on. And then we still like, we have a kid that's autistic, right? But this is not a good, thoughtful version of that. We have, oh, well, I mean, Egon wasn't a great dad, but like it felt like every way that they were trying to say something or be inclusive or be progressive, there was a but like that immediately followed that decision in the writer's room or in the characterization, whatever, that undid everything that this character was supposed to be, because it was so unthoughtful. And in doing that, it made it regressive, like, because they're actively trying to say like, oh cool, we are trying to be more diverse, or we're trying to show something more complex, or but like, you don't get brownie points for doing that. You have to have good writing. You have to be thoughtful in what you're doing with these characters and with the story. So just to have that doesn't mean that you get a pass, So that's how I felt about that.
Oh, interesting. Just that?
I mean, just that. It's fine. Who do you think this was for, Eric?
Oh my God. I mean, it was for Jason Reitman. Jason Reitman's nostalgic redemption journey. Not to say that it's bad, but that's how I feel. I feel like that's what it was for. Like, he's trying to redeem this idea of the Ghostbusters in a way that's like honoring his dad and also honoring Harold Ramis. And sure, I feel like some of the pieces were there, but ultimately it didn't do anything or say anything. And it's kind of just victim of the same sort of woes of its predecessor. Like, it kind of fell into the same traps. It's kind of toxic. It's not a great story. Kind of it.
It really does depend on the nostalgia that you have for the series, right? Like, and this is why I thought that the 2016 version was such a better take on Ghostbusters, and it was so much more fun. The jokes landed, the world building was great, the sets were cool. It felt new, it felt fun, it felt interesting. Like, and I know that without that character, it was a little bit different, but still, like, in every sense of that film, I do feel like that was an honest redemption of the franchise. And I feel like watching that version of Ghostbusters was how I remembered watching the original Ghostbusters. I was like, oh, cool. Like, I was a kid. I was 5. I did not know. I mean, the movie came out when I was born, before I was born. But, like, I didn't know I didn't know anything, right? And so then, like, the memories that I did have of it, I was like, oh, cool. This 2016 version is it. This is it. And when I went back and watched it, I was like, oh my God. But that's a perfect example of taking something and punching it up and writing it better and knowing the IP that you're working with and building a whole universe or like a whole world, building upon what was there and making it better and removing the racist comments, the sexism, all of this. Like, that's how you be thoughtful. That's how you do this. And instead of like seeing that, it felt like, and being like, oh yeah, absolutely, we can totally do something like this, rather than even using that as some sort of inspiration, which they like, technically that film is not canon in the Ghostbusters cinematic universe, which is awful. But they were just like, no, but original Ghostbusters, no, but this is what we're going for. And if that's what they were going for, I think they nailed it. It was unthoughtful. It was not fun. It didn't land even in like a cute way or anything, because it just suffered from too much nostalgia.
Yeah.
And bad writing.
Agreed. Did you like it?
Oh my God, I totally loved it, podcast.
Loved it.
No, I hated it. It was the most nothing thing that I've seen in a long time.
Yeah.
How about you?
I mean, generally no, but it's more of a no leaning meh than like a hard no. Because I still think like I did watch it twice, and there were still several like sequences that I'm like, oh, like even in the opening sequence when he's trapping that ghost in the house, and like the fog sweeps across the ground, and you see the silhouette of the monster, and you're like, I
That was
mean,
great. I was like, cool, this is the movie we're doing. But it was not at all the movie that we were doing.
Exactly. I know, and that's the thing. So there are parts of it that I'm like, that was actually really cool and like fucking awesome, and like I'm so into this. But then as a whole, it kind of deteriorated and didn't end up paying off almost anything. And so no leaning meh, because some of those scenes were really good. That's why I'm leaning meh on it.
That opening scene, this movie did what Mortal Kombat did, where it started off with a really strong scene. We're like, oh, fuck yeah, this is what I'm here for. And then that scene had like nothing to do with anything else. And and nothing felt like the storytelling was just wildly, it felt like two different directors did those two scenes.
Yeah.
Or did the first scene, then the rest of the movie.
Yeah. It's it's not, it's a mess, but some of it I still like. That whole car sequence I still think is amazing, but
oh my god,
failed again.
I should have said the first one was for come in mommies. Why didn't I say that the first film is for mommies? I fucked up.
You know what?
Oh my god.
And you know what? That.
And this movie, the remake, is
for daddies.
It's for daddies. Yeah.
Bad daddies and mommies.
That's it. Wow. Yep. Okay.
Wow, we really got to the root of the Ghostbusters. Can I ask something?
Yes.
Can we not do Ghostbusters ever again? No, I'm just kidding. But I mean, granted, if something comes out and like it's like worth doing 100%. But I'm so tired of Ghostbusters shit. I think it's so like boring and like okay.
Look, I love.
I'm so disinterested.
I love the gadgets.
Yeah.
Love the premise. I love a lot about the idea of the Ghostbusters. Really hate the storytelling and the characterization in the Ghostbusters.
I could not be less interested in it after ingesting all of this stuff multiple times too. Like I don't want any more of it.
I mean, like, arguably, whenever we record an episode, we spend 10 hours on an IP because we are watching the movies, we are organizing notes, looking up fun facts, we are recording this podcast. So, I mean, we've spent 20 hours now collectively with the Ghostbusters. And you just did a rewatch of Afterlife, so probably 12 for you.
Yeah, probably something in there. Yeah, because I watched the newest one twice. But, I mean... yeah, we've spent a lot of time with this IP, and I'm like, I'm kind of glad that like this is just came out, so we're probably not going to get another one for a while.
I hope that other one does not get made.
Jess, how bad is that? That's such a bad idea.
It's a really fucking bad idea.
Oh my god! And why else would they cast J.K. Simmons? I mean, granted, he is dead, but like as a cameo, I guess, because cameos exist. I don't know. Whatever.
When this film was trying to talk about like breaking the cycle of bad parenting or something like that, maybe, and we're just going to show that everything is cyclical and just bring back all of the baddies every time in the same way, like, oh my god, are Mommy and Paul Rudd gonna have a baby, and then that baby is going to be the Oscar surrogate for this second one?
The yawniest yawn. The yawniest yawn I could yawn, truly.
Mm-hmm.
Ugh, boring.
Well, thank you so much for listening, everybody. We made it. We watched this so you didn't have to.
Yeah, and if you did, congrats. And yay, Ghostbusters. But
if you disagree with us, tell us. We would love to hear from you.
Literally DM us and let's talk about it. I've had several people do that with me, and I kind of love it. Please don't forget to rate and review us wherever you get your podcasts, and follow us on all of our social media platforms. It really helps. The follows, the likes, the ratings, the reviews. Get us out there.
We are also like actually on our social media now. Go look at us. 2022, New Year, New Us.
Woo!
So yeah, we're gonna have some cool stuff on social media. So follow us on Instagram and the TikTok and all of the places, all of the things. Our artwork and music is by Eric Lefebvre. Our editing is by Danny Barkley. Thank you again for listening, and thank you, Eric.
Thank you, Jess.
And remember, stay cute.
And stay critical. Goodbye.
Bye.
Goodbye, 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 bye.
Bye, 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 bye.
This podcast has been brought to you by the NOTstalgia Network.
Visit thenotStalgiaNetwork.com for more.
You enter the dungeon and see the evil wizard pointing his wand directly at you. He says, "Show me a funny and delightful actual play Dungeons & Dragons podcast, or I'll consume your souls!" What do?
I take out my phone and find Quest Friends Forever on Spotify.
I show him how to find Quest Friends Forever on Apple Podcasts.
I share the Quest Friends Forever Instagram and YouTube pages with him.
And you all get critical hits!
Yay!
Quest Friends Forever is an actual play podcast starring 4 friends with varying levels of Dungeons & Dragons experience. Join us for new episodes every other Wednesday as we embark on fantasy adventures, play fast and loose with the rules, and laugh at each other's shenanigans. No prior D&D knowledge is required to listen, so everyone can feel free to join the fun. Quest Friends 4, that's the number 4, like how there's 4 of us, ever. Find us on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. That's Quest Friends Forever.